He may have campaigned on a platform centrally focused on immigration, but for over 2 years, Donald Trump has avoided coming out in support of a precise, comprehensive plan to tackle the issue his base arguably cares about the most. Well, that was until today. It's that large door in the wall that he was going to build. Speaking in the Rose Garden, the president unveiled a reform package, and he is urging the Republican Party to unite. Republicans unite. That's kind of a joke sometimes. They want him to unite behind him ahead of the 2020 elections. Now, the proposal has already drawn criticism from both sides of the aisle, with Democrats largely opposed to it on principle, and even some moderate Republicans arguing against it as well. Not a surprise. But what is a surprise? Well, not really, because we always bring in the best voices here. We bring in our 360 view. We turn to our political panel, former Georgia State Representative LaDawn Jones and CEO of American Majority, Ryun. I'm sorry, guys, I have to be a little bit more sarcastic because we are talking about immigration. We are 2.5 years into this. Trump is finally doing what I think we talked about before, Ned, one of the first shows with you. He's giving us a plan to reform the system we have in place for the people who are here now, minus the dreamers. So the president plan does tackle a few different issues, but the central one is changing the nature of who we accept as immigrants to this nation. For example, Trump says that right now the U.S. lets in approximately 12% of its immigrants based on skills and 66% based on family ties. This would change it because that's called chain migration. It would flip it to roughly 57% based on skills and 33% based on family connections. LaDawn, start with you. Is that a good idea? And if not, I mean, come on, merit-based. What could be wrong with that? What would be a better way?
Well, I like the idea that he's starting not from what was already put out there, but when you talk about changing laws like this, you have to look at it as a spider web. When you move something on one side, it affects something on the other side of the web. So when we bring in workers based on a merit system, will that affect our unions and our workers who are trying to keep a wage that is fair in this country? Is that going to affect other things that are important? So I like to at least start the discussion, but we know as Democrats, you've got to have DACA on the table, and we have to do something about the people who are already here. Otherwise, it's not comprehensive.
Well, that's interesting because you say the people that are already here. I mean, I was like, most of his base would say, hey, everybody that's illegal in the country, you have to go out and start all over and get in line with the rest of them. That did come out in this plan today. Ned, your response, obviously, to what she said, and also as someone who believes in a more conservative approach to immigration, does the plan actually go far enough?
Well, first of all, Scotty, I think we're all probably right here pretty realistic about what's going to happen between now and 2020 on this front. Absolutely nothing. But I applaud Trump for making this move today. And actually, 2020 is going to be a referendum on two things, Scotty. It's going to be about health care and it's going to be about immigration. Well, for it to be a referendum, you actually have to be proposing something. So I applaud Trump for doing this. I think it is a start. As you pointed out, I don't think you're going to get many Democrats supporting this. And again, Susan Collins and others mentioned and brought up the whole DACA thing. The other thing that I will point out is something you mentioned. I think the whole chain migration situation is a bit of a poison pill. I do not see Democrats wanting to give that up because they realize over the next 20 years, 7 to 8 million will come in through the chain migration process. And by a margin of 2 to 1, they vote Democrat. Democrats for political power are never going to give that up. And so I think what we're going to have is, again, more conversations over the next 18 months and that the 2020 elections, not only at the presidential level, but obviously at the House and Senate, this will be one of the issues in which people decide, do we actually want to fix our immigration system, which I think is badly broken, or do we not? That's what it's going to be about in 2020. But I applaud, again, Trump. He's got ideas out there. The other thing I'll say is this, Scotty. Lindsey Graham's idea has actually got some real merits on actually fixing the asylum problem, which I think is an interesting conversation to have.
Well, it's interesting, first of all, Ned, that you're agreeing with Lindsey Graham. I guess, somewhere something's getting cold, I think would be the old cliche phrase. But at the same time, though, aren't you a little frustrated? I mean, come on now, Republicans controlled the House and the Senate. If President Trump didn't want to see this as anything but political, why did he not push for this kind of change back in when he was first elected, when he might have been able to do something about it?
Because he couldn't.
No, but he controlled Republicans, had the House and the Senate. Why couldn't he?
Because
he didn't know what he was doing.
I don't mean to step on LaDawn.
What?
Well, no, here's the thing. Really quick, LaDawn, really quick. The problem here, Scotty, has been not every Republican is on the same page as Donald Trump. And I would argue we've gotten into this situation because of an unholy alliance between Democrats and Republicans, Democrats for political power, and let's face it, a Chamber of Commerce type corporate Republicans for cheap labor. So when you say that he had the House and the Senate, he didn't. He didn't have Republicans that actually agreed with him. They were citing more of the corporate Chamber of Commerce types.
Ah, that brutal truth that comes out of your mouth, Ned. I know Republicans don't want to hear it, but they need to. LaDawn, one of the president's stated reasons for shifting to a higher skilled, more merit-based system is that this would actually protect America's working class. You said that you felt that it might actually hurt it. It would also protect lower income populations. Where in the world, where do you feel like this is actually going to hurt it rather than helping, as the president thinks it's going to do?
Well, I think that's something that remains to be seen. But if we do have workers that come in and are willing to accept wages that are lower than the standards that we have set, in America, progressives are moving towards a higher minimum wage, a living wage, and this will only go to depress those wages to a lower number. We are a country that is rich enough to afford to pay skilled people for their hard work, and we don't want, in the same way that there's an issue about cutting in line for the people who just skip over the border, there's an issue of cutting in line in front of Americans who are union workers and building the things that we're trying to build to make America great again. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not a good idea. I'm just saying it's something we need to look at to make sure that it's best for the citizens that are here.
LaDawn, is there any chance that the Democrats are going to agree to anything without the Dreamers and the DACA being on the table? I mean, is it kind of dead on arrival without that?
It should be. You know, those things have to be on the table so that it can move forward. However, I will say, if those things come on the table and we have to talk about border security shouldn't shut down the conversation either. I think to be comprehensive, we need to put it all together and let's just take care of it. There's no silver bullet for this issue.
Okay, so Ned, can't we separate the two out? I mean, if we're talking, can't we put out a reform program for what we have now and the people who are trying to come in legally right now and border security? Can't we separate out those two issues? Because obviously, when you merge them together, it gets too murky, and guess what? We end up with a government shutdown, and everybody, especially the Republicans, lose. Can Republicans actually separate out the two issues?
Well, I would like them to, Scotty. I would actually like them to focus on this immigration reform and then make border security part of national defense. I mean, we've seen that with new Secretary of Defense Shanahan taking some of that Afghanistan funding and putting it towards the southern border wall. I think this has been a bit of a mistake in not making it more of a national security issue, again, using Section 284 funding to build the southern wall in areas where we know there's drug smuggling and illegal activity. So I actually think there is an argument to be made. Let's deal with this, Trump's plan in dealing with our current immigration system, and turn the border wall into more of a national security issue. And I think you might actually be able to have some success on that front. From a strategic viewpoint in regards to Republicans, how are the Democrats going to vote against national security and try and cut defense spending if that's the argument that Trump starts to make?
LaDawn, I know the way they do that, it's if Trump is actually the one making the argument. That's their simple answer right there. Thank you, LaDawn, and thank you, Ned, for joining us on this.
Thanks, Scotty.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.